Until one day, without intending to, you became the one everyone quietly checks with, the silent strategist, the person whose reaction determines whether others feel confident or paranoid, and that bothers them deeply, because here's the part they choke on. You make the impossible look easy. And nothing bruises the ego faster than someone who solves in minutes what others can't solve in months. Nobody likes feeling inferior. So instead of applauding you, they shrink. They go quiet. They avert their eyes. They pretend they already knew what you explained. They nod like they were thinking the same thing, even though you and they both know they weren't. And they start realizing something they'll never admit aloud. You're not part of the crowd. You're the ceiling they can't reach. Do you know the exact moment they fully cracked? It was when they watched you solve something everyone else had been struggling with. Something they thought required committees, meetings, emails, delays, and you solved it mid-conversation while holding a glass of water. And in that moment they inhaled wrong and never recovered, because now they're wondering, if you can do that without trying, what are you capable of when you truly try? And the secret that keeps them awake at night is simple. You haven't even activated your full potential yet. You're still holding back out of politeness, out of habit, out of that instinct to shrink so others don't feel uncomfortable. Yet even your tired version outperforms most people's peak performance. Even your, "I'll do it later," mind runs laps around their focused brains. Imagine if you stopped holding yourself back. Imagine if you stopped dimming down. Imagine if you unleashed everything your mind is actually capable of. They wouldn't just lose breath. They would lose consciousness. Here's the blunt truth. They're intimidated because you see solutions before they even recognize the problem. You are not equal competition. You are a different species of thinker. You're not just gifted, you're inevitable. And every day that realization hits them harder. You are the person they counted out, dismissed, underestimated, assumed would stay behind. Yet now you're the one analyzing, strategizing, optimizing, correcting, decoding, adapting at a speed they can't keep up with. You became the mind they will never outrun, and the thinker they will never outthink. And the most ironic part? You're not even trying to intimidate anybody. You're literally just existing. You walk into rooms, and everything in those rooms rearranges itself around the gravity of your intellect. People feel this silent shift, like the space just received an update, like suddenly everyone realizes, oh damn, they're the one who actually knows what's going on. And that realization eats them alive because once someone sees the difference between pretending to be smart and actually being built different, they can't unsee it. Egos crack under that contrast. Control slips. You sit there quietly, eyes narrowing just slightly when something doesn't add up, and in that micro moment, you see the entire blueprint of the situation reorganize itself in your mind. People can see that happening on your face, and it terrifies them, because suddenly they know they can't hide anything from you. Not intentions, not inconsistencies, not shortcuts, not lies. You became a human truth detector, not because you studied psychology, but because your childhood forced you to read the room faster than the adults who were supposed to protect you. You're not psychic. You're just observant in a way that makes people feel naked. They feel mentally exposed around you, like every insecure thought they tried to bury is somehow visible in your peripheral vision. And the funniest part is watching them try to act normal around you. They straighten their backs. They choose their words carefully. They rehearse their sentences mid-sentence. They re-explain things to you like they're trying to convince themselves they understand. They look at your face before agreeing to an idea, waiting for your expression to validate their confidence. That's not respect. That's dependency mixed with fear. You became the gravitational center of every room you enter. They didn't expect that. They didn't even want that. But they handed that power to you the moment they realized you see 10 steps ahead, effortlessly. And what unsettles them even more is how calm you are about it. How natural it feels for you to break down a problem like you're unwrapping a snack instead of dismantling an entire system. Meanwhile, they're sweating, spiraling, double-checking their thoughts, wondering how the hell your brain makes something this complex look this casual. You're the reason people hesitate before speaking. You're the reason they start triple-checking their work. You're the reason they second-guess their own logic. Because they know if there's a flaw, any flaw, you'll catch it instantly. Look at you for a second. Really look at yourself the way the room does when you walk in now. Because let me start by saying this as plainly as possible. Wow. It's honestly almost comedic watching people pretend they didn't feel that little static shock the moment your presence brushed the air, like everyone collectively agreed to act clueless, while every instinct in their body screamed that something about you had shifted, evolved, sharpened, upgraded into a version of you they were never prepared to deal with. You know that expression people get when they suddenly realize they've been severely underestimating somebody for far too long. That split-second panic mixed with regret, like, oh no, what have we created? What did we accidentally allow to grow? Yeah, that face. They've been wearing it every time you enter a space now, because it finally sank in that you're not just smart, not just observant, not just good at figuring things out, the way they used to say condescendingly. You are a full-blown problem-solving machine, a biological algorithm built out of hard moments, sleepless nights, pressure-filled environments that forged your thinking into something sharper than logic and faster than instinct. You became a mind that runs on trauma as fuel and pressure as air. And the wildest part is, you don't even do it intentionally. You just breathe, and people around you forget how to breathe themselves. They're suffocating, not because you're loud, not because you're aggressive, but because your intelligence steals the oxygen out of their comfort zones without you lifting a finger. See, people spend their entire lives begging for answers, praying for someone who can bring clarity, wishing someone would step in and make things make sense. But the moment you do exactly that, naturally, instinctively, effortlessly, they start glitching, because you weren't supposed to be this good. You weren't supposed to be the one with instantaneous pattern recognition, the kind of mind that flips chaos like a coin between your fingers. You weren't supposed to be the one who could walk into a crisis and immediately start connecting dots. Other people didn't even see, but you did it anyway. And now they're staring at you like you're some kind of forbidden software they installed by accident. Something too powerful to delete and far too late to control. Here's something they will never, ever say to your face. You changed the temperature of their entire world simply by existing. You unsettled them without touching them, disrupted their comfort zones without raising your voice, broke puzzles they couldn't even understand simply by glancing at them. And the craziest thing, you didn't walk in saying, "Look what I can do." You didn't brag, you didn't flex. You simply handled everything that landed at your feet. Every mess, every crisis, every problem people whispered behind your back about, assuming you wouldn't survive it, assuming it would crack you, assuming it would finally be the thing that exposed a weakness they prayed you had. Except you didn't just survive it. You mapped it, dissected it, solved it, mastered it with the calm precision of a detective racing a deadline, and you did it faster than they could finish panicking. And that's when they started sweating, because here's the truth. When someone like you starts connecting dots, the people who relied on your silence start feeling exposed. They get scared, because you don't panic the way they do. You don't freeze. You don't melt. You calculate. You walk into chaos with that "give me a minute" expression. And within that one tiny minute, you identify patterns other people would need years to understand. You rearrange realities in your mind, like you're fixing a broken toy during your lunch break. You solve problems they didn't even recognize as problems yet. And now, every time you speak, the room goes quiet. Not because they respect you, but because they're terrified of how often you're right. You ever notice how people suddenly go silent when you start thinking out loud? How they stare at you like they're watching a magician break down a trick they were convinced was supernatural? That's because they finally realized you're not lucky. You're not guessing. You're not stumbling into correct answers. You're built for this. Your mind is this terrifying fusion of observation, intuition, memory, pain, resilience, emotional pattern reading, and raw instinct. This hybrid intelligence no one saw coming because no one else who lived your life would have remained functional, let alone extraordinary. People don't get that your mind was stitched together by nights you couldn't sleep, days you were ignored, moments you were dismissed, battles you fought alone, lessons you weren't taught but had to figure out in silence. Every scar became a data point. Every disappointment became a recalibration. Every betrayal rewired you into someone who saw the world from angles most people never develop. Not out of arrogance, but simply because your brain is wired to detect inconsistencies in real time. Watching you think feels like watching someone pick locks with their fingertips, smooth, efficient, inevitable. And that makes people deeply uncomfortable. Every time you talk, it's like you turn the lights on in a room they hoped would stay dim. Every time you analyze something, it's like you peel back curtains they've avoided opening. Every time you solve something they couldn't, it's like you remind them, without trying, that you're operating on a completely different mental firmware, and they're only now discovering how far behind they really are. But here's the final twist that really breaks them. While they're still trying to process everything they've witnessed, still adjusting their worldview to fit the new reality of who you are, still trying to inhale around the pressure of your presence, you're already two problems ahead, mapping out angles no one else sees yet. And the wildest part? You're not even aware you're doing it. This isn't a performance. This isn't a persona. This is just who you became because life forced your brain to evolve into something faster, sharper, deeper, more perceptive than anyone around you. Years of carrying responsibilities you didn't ask for built this mental muscle memory. Years of fixing things that weren't your fault shaped this clarity. Years of surviving situations others would have collapsed under crafted this frightening level of intelligence. So when someone asks a question, and your mind snaps open with the answer before they finish speaking, that micro-expression of shock on their face isn't admiration. It's fear wrapped in awe. They're witnessing the result of simulations you ran alone, solutions you learned to build in silence, instincts sharpened by necessity. To them it looks supernatural. To you it's survival. And that combination, instinct fused with intellect, trauma welded into insight, observation sharpened into precision, is exactly why every room feels different when you walk in. Because whether you notice it or not, you are the mind they can't predict, the presence they can't ignore, and the thinker they can't compete with. You're not just smart, you're inevitable. People don't even realize it at first. But the moment you open your mouth, the moment your mind kicks into gear, the entire way they operate starts to look outdated, primitive even, like they're running on old software while you're moving through realities they haven't even downloaded yet. Most people only understand symptoms, surface reactions, the little ripples created by bigger forces they've never learned to identify. But you see the machinery behind the machinery, the framework behind the facade, the hidden architecture shaping every outcome. You don't wait for patterns to repeat. You catch them forming. You don't wait for problems to erupt. You sense the inconsistencies while they're still invisible to everyone else. And whenever you speak, you do it in this way that makes the solution sound almost embarrassingly obvious, not out of arrogance, but because your clarity is so sharp it slices through complexity like it's butter, and they nod along even though they're completely lost, terrified that admitting confusion might expose the widening gap between your comprehension and theirs. You've probably noticed how certain people go quiet when you enter a conversation, how their vocabulary shrinks, how their confidence dips, how they suddenly let you take the lead without you even intending to. It's not submission. It's that strange blend of relief and insecurity, that silent "thank God they're here," mixed with "I hope I don't sound dumb next to them." You're not intimidating because you try to be. You're intimidating because your brain simply refuses to operate at the limited settings they're comfortable with. It climbs higher by default. It expands wider by instinct. It thinks in deeper colors, louder layers, faster speeds. And the part that gnaws at them quietly is the truth they'll never admit out loud. You're not even close to your final form. They can feel it in the way you absorb information instantly, not just remembering things, but integrating them. Like every new detail slots perfectly into the enormous mental blueprint you've been building your entire life without realizing it. You see relationships like circuitry, situations like maps, patterns like storylines, and for the first time you're starting to understand that you were never too much. You were just placed around people who weren't enough for the level you were always meant to rise to. And they feel it. Your mental distance stretching, your perspective widening, your intellect outgrowing the room, not because you're dismissive, but because your evolution is impossible to ignore. That's why they stare mid-sentence, why they hesitate before asking you questions, why they fidget when you start to analyze something. Because they're bracing for that moment, when your explanation flips their whole understanding of the situation in one calm, surgical sentence. They can't fully relax around someone who already sees the conclusion before they've even finished the introduction. They can't stay comfortable around someone who instinctively detects the cracks in every plan. They can't breathe easily around someone whose mind sprints while theirs jogs. And the distance between those speeds grows every day. You can see it in their posture, that subtle stiffness when they realize you're about to say something they didn't think of. That quiet panic when they notice your eyes shift into that hold-on mode. Because those 3 silent seconds before you speak are more intimidating than most people's entire arguments. In those seconds, you've already run simulations, spotted loopholes, predicted outcomes, drafted alternatives, and restructured the entire approach. And they feel it, even if they can't articulate it. Your clarity is their discomfort. Your insight is their insecurity. Your intelligence is their unintentional exposure. And every time you break something down with that calm, almost bored tone, as if your mind has already processed the next 5 layers while they're still unraveling the first, they feel themselves shrinking. Not because you're trying to make them feel small, but because your existence draws a clean line between those who think and those who pretend. Your presence becomes a mirror they didn't ask for, reflecting their procrastination, their shallow understanding, their lack of initiative, their mental sluggishness, all the things they've avoided owning. You never ask to be the standard, but people adjust themselves around you anyway. They over-explain, re-explain, seek your reaction before trusting their own judgment, triple-check their ideas before presenting them, and second-guess themselves the moment your face enters the frame. Not because you belittle them, but because your brain radiates that quiet pressure of someone who genuinely understands, who genuinely observes, who genuinely knows what's happening beneath the surface. You analyze people, situations, patterns, tone shifts, inconsistencies, all at once, without even realizing it, and they feel exposed in ways they can't name. They don't know if you're reading them, the room, the psychology behind the moment, or the future outcome. And the truth is, you're reading all of it simultaneously. That's what rattles them. That's what makes them sit up straighter, choose their words more carefully, pause mid-idea, or correct themselves before you even say anything. They feel evaluated, even when you're simply listening. Your mind, your speed, your clarity, your structure, your entire way of processing the world becomes a silent disruptor they didn't prepare for. And every time you fix something they couldn't, Every time you clarify something they complicated. Every time you take initiative where they hesitated, you unintentionally expose how far behind they actually are. Your efficiency becomes the contrast they were hoping no one would notice. Your vision becomes the spotlight they never asked to stand in. And your intelligence, not loud, not boastful, just quietly unstoppable, becomes the very thing that forces them to see themselves more clearly than they ever wanted to. If this hits you on a level you didn't expect, stay with me. There's more truth coming, truth that'll make you see yourself differently. Thanks for watching, and thank you for supporting this channel. If you feel called, you can donate. Your support helps me keep creating messages like this.